Okay, good evening, everybody. Tonight, these are your candidates vying for your next vote for the Wellington Central Electorate. But with every election, there's one thing stepping in the way, and that's your vote. Kia ora, good evening, and welcome to tonight's It's in the Ballot show for the Wellington Central Electorate. Now, before we get to introducing the candidates, we've got a lot of apologies. And I'm pretty disappointed because many of these apologies were in less than the last 24 hours. Ibrahim Omer is unable to attend due to a funeral. Scott Sheeran declined to attend. Natalia Albert was confirmed to come and then was sick and didn't nominate an option 3. Tamatha Paul was coming, which was news to us, but she also now is sick and didn't nominate an option 3. Christopher Gordon is unable to attend. However, I'm just trying to think. Have I managed to get the apologies? I don't know. There's a lot of them in Wellington Central. There's 11 of them, but I think we've got the main point across that. We're a bit annoyed the big parties aren't here, but that's their choice. This will stay up right up until election day and beyond. So that's what's happening there. And I'd like to introduce to our question host, retired Mayor Andy Foster. Thank you for coming in to join us on this night. And how's retirement life treating you? You're on microphone.
I've managed to unretire from politics at the moment because I'm standing in another electorate for New Zealand First in Mana. So, yeah.
Oh, yes, and that show was quite a good show.
Well, we were the pilot, so
I know.
Refined all the protocols, all the way we're going to do things.
I know.
And the big parties didn't turn up there either.
Shall we say we had a few good names there. We did have ACT and we did have New Zealand First.
We did indeed. And
but you are right. Oh, and we had the Greens. Yep. But yes, you are right. National and Labour did not attend, and we're still yet to have our first national candidate to appear on the show. Karuna was meant to be there for the last show, but fell ill. It seems to. I think is this called the election bug?
There's clearly some lurgy going along. Maybe these people don't have the stamina or the.
They need to smoke a little bit more cannabis, I think, and have a little bit of a stronger character to turn up.
That would only be the medicinal version, wouldn't it, Michael?
Okay, so let's kick up. First up with Michael Appleby, your opening statement on why the Wellington Central voters should give you their electoral vote.
Well, I'm the only one with any integrity. In the last election, Grant Robertson agreed that he had smoked cannabis. Nicola Willis agreed that she had smoked cannabis. So did Mr. Shaw of the Green Party. And of all the 11 candidates who are running for Wellington Central this year, all of them have confirmed that they have smoked cannabis. Haven't you? Yes, you have, haven't you? You've agreed on other hustings.
I prefer the cookie. I'm pretty sure I got ripped off. I think I said that at Aotearoa Valley.
And you've smoked cannabis as well? Absolutely. And even in ACT, let's face it, I've always thought that ACT stood for the Association for Cannabis Tolerance. And of course, in the last election, when we had the referendum, unfortunately, St. Cindy proved to be a coward. She said that she wasn't going to say how she was going to vote on the cannabis issue. She said how she was going to vote on the end of life issue, and that attracted 66%. And of course, in the referendum, which is not in fact enforceable, in the referendum, 49% of New Zealanders agreed that they would smoke cannabis. So what's happened is that we've got 1.4 million people in New Zealand who wanted to legalise cannabis, and only 30,000 people voted the other way, so that it was 51% to 49%. We want cannabis to be legalised not just medicinally, but also recreationally as well. I'm a human rights lawyer. I've got a master's degree in a whole range of areas, and I have been a lecturer in the law faculties of Auckland University, Victoria University, Massey University, a teaching fellowship in Otago University. I've been the head of a 40-strong law faculty at the Open Polytechnic. And I can tell you that the majority of New Zealanders have smoked cannabis, 80% of them. And of all the people out there, if you don't smoke cannabis, then in fact, the person next to you has, statistically speaking.
Well, thank you for that. And I must be in that 20%, but I do remember voting yes in the referendum. So that is, because I wasn't looking about myself, I was looking about everyone else.
Yes.
Okay. Now I've just got to sit down there. Don, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you. I'm here representing a small left-wing organisation called Workers Now. We're standing 2 candidates in this general election, one in Auckland and one in Wellington. And we have a 10-point program. And of the 10 points, the 3 that are closest to my heart are a better deal for lower paid workers, and the removal of the restrictions on the many restrictions on the right to strike in New Zealand, the advancement and defence of women's rights, and the advancement and defence of freedom to speech, freedom to speak, freedom of expression, which is under considerable attack and has been for some time under the name of hate speech and other dubious things like that. Now, for the course of my working life, which is coming towards the end of my working life, I've seen workers' conditions go backwards in just about every respect. When I started my working life, you didn't have people on full-time employment having to go to the food bank to get enough to get by. You didn't have people sleeping in their cars and sleeping in the street. You didn't have that sort of shit. So the inequality in New Zealand has gone crazy, actually. I mean, it always has been.
You've used up your time. You've used up your time.
Thank you. That's my statement.
Okay, and just a little reminder, when Alex puts his hand out and start counting down, that means your time is running out. Yeah, and on the stream, there's a buzzer that goes off when your time's up. So, but unfortunately, we're not going to be hearing it here tonight. Okay, Taylor, your opening statement of why the Wellington Central voters should give you their electoral vote.
Well, g'day, I'm Taylor Arneil, and I'm the New Zealand First candidate for Wellington Central. Now, why vote for me? Very simple. I'm not going to make great, big, lofty promises and then leave you disappointed because I'm not able to fulfill them in the 3-year time frame that I am elected to Parliament in. For me, I studied at Victoria University of Wellington in a Masters of Strategic Studies, and that was very much not just what is the end goal, but what you need to do along the way in order to achieve each part and then get there in the end. I'm the type of person who will actually turn around and say to you, look, this is what we want, but we're going to be honest with you, we're not going to be able to get there in 3 years' time, but we can get to here, and that is what I'm going to be concentrating on. And so if you want to have a politician who's going to be open and honest with you and about what he can complete, then please vote for me. And party vote New Zealand First.
Perfect 60 seconds. Okay, next up, Meg. Is
Hi.
it short for Megan?
No, it's just Meg, actually.
Okay, yeah, okay. No, I was always wondering because to me it always feels like it's a shortened version of the name.
Hi everyone, welcome here tonight. My name is Meg Lim and I'm standing for Vision NZ, which is in an umbrella party called Freedoms New Zealand. So I am standing because in New Zealand right now we have a few areas that are in jeopardy right now. So we have our cost of living crisis, we have our health sector, we have crime, education, our emergency services, and even housing and other areas as well. I have a background in economics and finance, and I am very concerned about our economy right now with our inflation levels, which have come very slightly down from 7 to 6, but it is still hitting too hard to households, families, students, and pretty much everyone across the board in a different way. And did you actually know that right now we have 1 in every 5 Kiwis work for the government right now? So we need to make some adjustments there and get funds from the back office to the front services that need it. And also I'd like to talk about education, which a lot of parents are concerned about in education.
Just to let you know, your time's well and truly used up.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, candidates, for doing that. We've got to have a few who need to sit there and start looking at Alex's hand when they're doing their speeches, but I'm pretty sure we'll get there. Okay, so now we're going to cross over to the Electorate video so you can find out where Wellington Central voters live. So let's find out where the Rongotai electorate voters are based. Now, the Rongotai electorate is a unique electorate. It is in 2 parts, Eastern and Southern Wellington and the Chatham Islands. Starting west of the Chatham Islands, you have the southern half of the Miramar Peninsula, including Now let's find out where the Wellington Central voters live. The Wellington Central electorate is Wellington's capital city electorate. Starting from the south, you've got Kowhai Park and Brookland, before heading over to Mount Cook and Mount Victoria and Oriental Bay. Heading a little bit north, you include the suburbs of Thorndon and Pipitea before we head west to cover the suburbs of Northland and Karori. And then you head out rural into Macra and Macra Beach. So what is unique about the Wellington Central electorate is that it has New Zealand's largest suburb, Karori. It also has the Beehive, home of both the legislature and the executive. And it also has the Picton Ferry terminal for vehicles heading to the South Island. Okay, and the questions we think you'll be asking after watching tonight's show, let's bring them up on screen. Will Kiwis approve of having 30% of annual house sales in New Zealand going to overseas buyers? Will the Wellington Central voters vote to have a by-election in Pukehinau Lambton Ward valued at $70,000, equivalent to delivering 30,000 litres of diesel to mobile Karori? And with all the talk about building more roads to reduce carbon emissions, why are those roads forcing cyclists to mix and mingle with motorists? Was protected cycle lanes deliberately left off the plans? I think there are some very fitting questions that Wellington Central voters might be asking after watching tonight's show. So let's sit there and get to it. Now, some of you at home would already know how it's in the ballot work, but what happens here is each of these candidates here pick a box number of they pick a box number and answer the question that's in it. Now, we have given the candidates questions in advance so they can prepare for some decent quality answers in advance. I do know we had some who were within less than 24 hours notice because we only got emails from the Electoral Commission yesterday with the contact details for the most recently registered candidates, which Wellington Central Returning Officer, thank you for doing that. You got there a lot quicker. Today we got the Aotearoa electorate one, and the show was, as our audience and viewers know, was aborted last night. And so 2 candidates were unable to be tracked down for that electorate. So let's kick off. Meg, what box number would you like to ask?
Number 9, and that is question J. Future of Local Government report says the current local government funding and finance system is already under pressure and is not sustainable. How is your party going to respond to this issue?
So I just talked about that 1 in every 5 Kiwis is working for the government right now. So it's not just central government, but it's also local government that has expanded.
Can you hold your microphone up so those at home can
sure.
actually hear you?
Yeah, sure. So I'll just start again, right? So so I talked before about that 1 in 5 Kiwis is actually working for the government. So it's not just central government. We also have local government that has expanded as well, whereas our productivity has not expanded, and we still have issues, but we have growth in the. So we would be looking at needing to review how many people and how many staff there, and review of the efficiency and delivery of local government services with a view to cost savings. And ideas like 15-minute cities that are driven by global agendas need to really be shelved. Thanks.
Okay, Taylor, what box number would you like?
Let's do 13.
So, box number, the devil 13. I do remember Shannon removed their number 13s from their letterbox numbers when at one point in time. So you can't find a number 13 in Shannon, I believe.
Very superstitious people there.
Yeah.
Okay, it is question B. Question B. If elected to government, will your party introduce a 50-50 co-governance model on city councils? I suspect I know the answer to that one.
Look, when it comes down to co-governance, New Zealand First does have serious issues with the current model because it is very open to corruption. At the end of the day, if you do not have in place a proper system to deal with how people are being appointed and how conflicts of interest are being managed, then you are inevitably going to end up with the decisions being made by people in the smoky back rooms. Shane Jones and Winston Peters have sadly had to deal with that type of system before. So if we were going to do that, we would want it to be democratically elected people so that they can be held responsible by the people of Wellington and are not being appointed, because when you appoint people, it does open up the door to have the decisions being made in the smoky back rooms. And there's nothing wrong with actually asking the question of how do we avoid that from happening?
Okay, thank you there. Don, what box number would you like to pick?
5,
So, box number 5.
There are other numbers here other than the ones you can see at the front. So number 5. Right. It is question double A. So we'll just move this thing along. Right. The statement, opposition parties do not win elections, governments lose them. Do you agree or disagree with this statement?
I agree.
Would you like to add a bit of a reasoning to it? Why do governments tend to lose them rather than oppositions win them?
Yes. What happens is you have a whole lot of promises made at election time, and what people are going to do and what they're not going to do, and either Labor or National gets in. People are disappointed for 3 years. They get sick of it. They want to turn it around. So they either don't vote or they vote them out. I don't think people believe all the promises that have been made anymore, quite frankly. So that's opposition parties don't win elections, governments lose them.
Thank you. Okay, next up, Michael, what box number would you like to pick?
21, please. 21, please.
Okay. That is question F. How are you going to address the cost of living crisis?
Well, if you legalise cannabis for those over the age of 18 so that it's actually regulated by the government, then you're going to find that people are going to be growing cannabis out the backyards. Just as they're growing tomatoes and just as they're growing their beans out the back, you'll find that cannabis will become free. It means that people, instead of paying $350 an ounce, which has been the same for about the last 20 years in Wellington at least, people are going to be able to grow it. I mean, you can actually ring up now and get a doctor to assess you and get you cannabis, and it can be sent to you through the post. Unfortunately, when you do it like that, it's now $450 an ounce. So you can either pay, which is an elitist prize. So if you legalize cannabis so that people were able to actually grow it by themselves, then you'd find that people would get that much more each week, not $50 for a tinny, but they'd be able to grow it themselves and they'd be able to spend more money on their groceries.
We have a button, Sam.
Do we have a
Dom wants the button.
Yeah, the cost of living crisis has come about simply because a lot of low-paid working people are just not paid enough. People doing essential jobs, cleaning, driving buses, working in supermarkets, are not getting paid what they're worth. So what we believe is there should be an immediate rise in the minimum wage, and the cost of living should be indexed to inflation. And working people not getting paid enough. That's why there's a cost of living crisis.
Okay. So, Meg, what box number would you like? And the microphone, please.
Number 7. Okay. Okay, Meg, that is question W. Tell us one personal quality you have to offer as an MP.
You have a prepared answer for that?
Yes, I do. So one quality, I feel that our economy is in dire need right now, and I have a background in economics and finance, and I can see some adjustments that do need to happen to our economy. And so we have fiscal and monetary policy at the moment that needs attention because of what's happened in the last 6 years with the printing of money. It has accentuated, lifted our inflation up and devalued our dollar. So that is one quality, but along with that, I have also had community involvement with youth and at risk and with people who are vulnerable. So I've got that kind of approachability, kind of communication, people skills as well to help with that as well. Thanks.
Okay, Taylor, what box number?
17.
Okay, 17.
I remember that's number my mum used to always get for the raffle tickets. If the next person chooses number 12, you'll be choosing another one.
That is V. Tell us 3 words that sum up for you Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'm going to say 3 words that sum up our country. I imagine that's the intention of the question.
Sport, opportunity, and kindness.
Okay. We're not going to have someone going to use their button on that one? Okay, John, what box number?
Oh, 22.
Okay. Box number 22, that is question O. Rest homes are losing RNs, registered nurses, to Te Ora as they are unable to match the pay packages. Excuse me, do you think the pay packages for RNs should be equitable across all sectors of healthcare?
Well, I spend quite a lot of time in rest homes because I go around playing the piano there quite regularly, and I'm aware that the dedicated staff in those places are paid wretched money. So all of the money there has got to come up. It's amazing what those staff do on the pay that they get. Yeah, they need a rise.
Okay. Michael, what box number?
Number 6, please.
Number 6.
Number 6.
6. Okay. That is question P. Would your party advocate for introducing a sugar drinks tax to help combat obesity, dental decay, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and other chronic medical conditions?
No, I don't think that we would, because I think that what you're going to do there is to just impose extra costs on the sort of people who do, in fact, use a lot of sugar, which is the poorer people. And all you're going to do there is to increase the cost of living for those sorts of people who do take food and drink which does have excess sugar in it. You're not going to get the nanny state to stop people. They're still going to go out and buy these things, food or drink with excess sugar in it. And what's going to happen is that it's just going to make it more and more expensive for them, the people who can't, who can afford it least. It's the nanny state which is trying to impose itself on us.
Okay, Meg, what box number?
14. Okay. That's question E. Will you review the relationships and sexuality education in primary schools?
Well, yes, absolutely. So right now with the relationship sexuality education that has been rolled out across New Zealand to varying levels in our schools, now 5-year-olds are being taught sex education, sexuality education and gender ideology. So I know a number of parents, actually so many parents have approached me who are deeply concerned, and I know also that there are still parents who actually are still finding out about this and are very shocked when they've found out that their children have been exposed to this. So we would be removing that until parents are very comfortable, and the curriculum should be going no way near the classroom until parents are happy with that. And we will actually be also bringing about a parental rights bill to ensure that the rights go back to the parents with knowing what is being taught to their children. Thanks.
Okay, Taylor, what's your next box number?
Could I please get number 25?
25. That is question S. What MP in the current Parliament, not a party leader, do you most admire and why?
Well, this is going to be an interesting one.
They did all get it in advance, so.
If there is one who I do admire who is not a party leader, it is actually going to have to be Chloe Schwabrick. And I know that's probably going to get a lot of weird looks, but at the end of the day, she is formidably intelligent. She's a very good debater. And she has also got the best interests of students in the city of Auckland at heart. And that is one of the reasons why I admire her. She isn't false. Like I've worked with members of parliament before. I can tell when they are just saying what they are saying because they need to say it. But Chloe comes across very sincere, very knowledgeable about what she's talking about. And every time that she talks, I can tell that she does have the best interests of her constituents at heart. And that is why I admire her, because I do listen to other MPs in Parliament talk in speeches of the House, and I can tell that they really don't care.
Thank you. Don, what box number?
15, please.
15. Okay, that is question R. In your opinion, how well is the government managing the adverse medical and social impacts of the COVID vaccinations?
Not very well. They went from one extreme to another, really. They brought in very severe regulations and then went to drop them sort of quite abruptly. And the whole exercise of the COVID thing showed up the sort of inequality in society, because the people who had to carry the can were service people and working poorer people who had to sort of turn up to work regardless and do their best in the middle of all this thing. And everyone's saying, oh, that's great, you know, yeah, they're heroes and that. And then after the thing's finished, they're long forgotten. So, yeah, a bit of room for improvement, I think.
We have a button. Taylor, how would you like to butt in?
I don't think that the government is managing it very well, and that is very clear to see because we had a protest at Parliament and then a subsequent occupation. Now, at the end of the day, if you have a medical procedure and something happens to you because of that medical procedure, you are entitled to ACC. But the way the government has treated COVID vaccinations, if you claim to be injured from them, you are instead branded a conspiracy theorist, you're branded that you're spreading misinformation, that you're spreading fear. That is the wrong reaction to have, because then those people start talking and then a word gets out and then people socially start to get very angry. And then we saw what happened on the Parliament grounds. They did not manage it very well. They could have managed it a heck of a lot better, in my opinion.
Okay, Michael, what box number?
18. Oh, sorry.
Oh, another button. Oh, God, these buttons keep coming in, but they're very good buttons.
Right. So talking about how they managed it. So they're actually in denial of what's happening right now. If you look up on the government MedSafe website, they haven't actually been reporting about the medical events that have occurred after the vaccination since the end of last year, but I can let you know that it got up to over 60,000. I think it was about 63,000. And there are people with heart conditions now, kidney, liver disease now, so failure since then. And this is all ages that has occurred. So this is on MedSafe. So there is denial there. And people have been dismissed from ACC, as Taylor's talked a little bit about things, and the health system is deeply strained. And excess death since vaccination, all-cause mortality is up, even though the COVID deaths are not up right now. Thanks.
Now, some people might label what you've just said as misinformation. What is the best place to look at this data so those that want to go out, cross-reference, check it, where is the best place for it to look? Because, you know, as I say, I like data, I like cross-referencing facts myself, and some of the viewers at home probably would as well. So where's the best place we can look to access this data?
Sure. So good question. So on the government MedSafe site, which is run by the Ministry of Health, and so you'll be able to look up vaccination reports. So there should be reports on all vaccinations, and you'll be able to see the COVID varying vaccinations. And you'll be able to see the report then, you'll be able to see when the last one was. So it's the end of last year. So government website MedSafe.
Thank you for that, and thank you for providing a place to find the reference for it. Okay, now, Michael, you're not going to button on that?
No. 18.
18. Right. Okay, that is question you. Do you think, carrying on the theme, do you think New Zealand has coped well with the COVID-19 pandemic? What could have been done better? What lessons have we learned?
Well, unfortunately, I disagree with Meg. I think that New Zealand, by imposing our COVID restrictions, saved many thousands of lives. There obviously have been a few people where there have been bad reactions, but I think that overall we've done very well indeed. I don't think that we would have had so many survivors of COVID if we hadn't imposed those strict controls. I don't think we could have done better. I know that, everybody thinks that St. Cindy did a wonderful job. I just think that she was a coward when the referendum came around and not saying that she would, in fact, vote for legalising cannabis. She said that she would vote for the end-of-life bill, and that got 66%. Well, she admitted after the referendum that she voted yes for cannabis. But I think that it was cowardice on her part to not, in fact, say how she would have voted on cannabis.
Okay, and button card, Meg?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of different areas were impacted by the COVID response. So small businesses, I don't know if you can remember, but supermarkets have thrived through this time because guess why? Because all the small essential service food providers had to close, butchers and so forth. They had to close. So we have just given a whole market share to our supermarkets. Small businesses have suffered. So those who have been mandated, a lot are still displaced from their highly skilled industry that they should be in, and we are short of doctors and nurses and midwives and so forth right now. Even firefighters, many have, well, there are some from all industries who have been mandated. They were protesting as well outside Parliament. So many different industries are short right now of staff, and many staff are still not back in the industries. Only medical staff, only the mandates were lifted formally this year. That is a long time after the rest of the world had reacted by lifting the mandates.
Okay, and now we're back to you for choosing the box number. What box number?
Oh, you have 19. Okay. I knew you'd like that one. Turn that one over for you. I don't know what it says, but well, let's find out. Okay. L. Current information from overseas indicates that vaping is not a healthier alternative to smoking. Children of primary school age are becoming addicted. What is your party's plan to address this health concern?
That doesn't match up with what's on the...
It says L on here.
Okay, yep. Yeah, okay, yep, no, go ahead. No, my graphics don't match up. That's all right. Yeah, the string matches right, my graphics don't. So, yeah.
So which question is here?
No, the one that you've got out of the box, because that matches up with the sheet.
You got the question there?
So the vaping one, or?
Yes.
Yep, sure. So there's international research to show that any smoke-related product is a potential gateway to more harmful substances and not a way out, and that's what we are seeing in our country right now. And therefore, we're in favour of increasing of fines and penalties for those that are actually serving minors. So at the moment, a vaping store can be earning easily up to 40k in profit a month, yet they are only charged up to 1,000 every fine for serving a minor. So that is not really stopping them at all. So that needs to be lifted, and we need to be looking at restricting our stores and also the locations that they're in. They cannot be anywhere near schools and where children are. Thanks.
What sort of radius should they be from a school?
Definitely not somewhere where they can walk out at lunchtime.
So where Strathmore Shops has got a vape store, and across the road is Scots College.
So that shouldn't, yes, definitely we would legislate that is unsafe for children if they can have readily access. So you think about it, parents have allowed their children to go to school safely, but they may not know what they're doing at lunchtime and what they're purchasing. So we need to rethink this out, don't we?
And I hope that these children don't learn how to do the secret thing of using cash to hide their transactions on the bank statement. Yeah. Okay, Taylor, what box number?
Can I get number 4, please?
Right, number 4. It's a local question. Question A. What would you do to bring more life back into Wellington's central city? Very dear to my heart.
I was going to say, does that include Karori?
First and foremost, to bring more life to the city. I'm a young person, so the nightlife is actually quite a big thing for me. But with that, is another part of it is actually safety. And so I would actually want to see more night bus services being put on after around 10 p.m., 11 p.m., up until about 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning, because a lot of students who go out to town and they start partying, they don't often finish until 1 or 2 in the morning, and then it's either an Uber home or it's walking home. And there's a lot of, and there were quite a few stories that I heard when I was studying of students actually being attacked, and that put people off not just from going to town at night, but from going to town at all. And very, very slowly, we started to see more and more young people trickling away from the city centre and more so out towards other areas, or just straight up leaving Wellington City. So that is the first thing that I would do, night safety buses.
Let's use the button card, Michael.
I think if you legalised cannabis for those over the age of 18, which is the main goal left for the party, because of course we've actually had a number of our goals already succeeded. You can now get industrial cannabis in New Zealand. It's a $1 billion crop, industrial hemp. You can now get cannabis for medicinal purposes. And if you legalized it for recreational purposes as well, you'd find that you wouldn't find so many drunks down in town. You'd find that there'd be more life. People would be smoking a little bit more, enjoying their time, and you wouldn't have the violence that alcohol actually causes down in Courtenay Place at the moment. And a little bit of information from me as a lawyer: if the police in fact find you in town and you're under the influence of drugs or you're under the influence of alcohol, their primary duty is to in fact to take you home. And if that's not practicable, then they should take you up to the hospital or somewhere safe. And only if that is not practicable can they take you to prison. So don't forget, when next time you get caught downtown smoking cannabis or alcohol, drunk, they are not allowed to arrest you as the primary act. That's your lawyer tweaking here.
Thank you. Okay, it will be Don. I think we're up to on down the question chain.
Yeah, 20, please.
Right, number 20 is question M.
You say N or M?
M.
M.
In the
M for
2019 budget, $1.9 billion was allocated to improving mental health services. To what extent do you consider that this has improved our mental health system and made a difference to our country's well-being?
Well, it's not my field, and I don't know all the things that they've spent it on, but it's obviously not working because there are terrible mental health problems in the country, and I think a great many of them are caused by stress. And the stress comes from the way a lot of people are forced to live in unsatisfactory, cramped living conditions, working too hard for too little money, and sending their kids off to school with not enough to eat and stuff like that. That causes stress. That does nothing for your mental or your physical health. And I think if those problems were addressed, it would probably be better spent money than what a lot of that other mental health money has gone to.
Thank you. And just for a previous point, asking Meg for the facts there, I'd like to thank our production team at home for posting that link into the live chat so everyone can see that information for themselves. So thank you so much for making it available, and thank you to our remote editing team for making that information available out to the viewers. Okay, Michael, what box number?
24. 24, please.
Right, question 24 is another local question. Question C. Thinking about Wellington's entertainment district, do you think that Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act and its administration by the authorities is fit for purpose, and why?
This really follows on to my last answer. I think that the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act should also incorporate the Sale and Supply of Cannabis Act. I mean, you can now get cannabis for your medicinal purposes. And in fact, when the bill was in Parliament, I went down to watch it being passed. And Simeon Brown, who's the oldest young man in Parliament, actually saw me dressed in my, what you might call my uniform, and was pointing up at me from Parliament saying, there he is, there's Michael Appleby, there's the leader of the Aotearoa Legalise Cannabis Party, and it's all his fault that the Medicinal Cannabis Act is in fact being passed. Well, I take pride in that, and I believe that the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act should be extended to cannabis as well.
What year will be on the end of that act?
I think that in another 6 years, because none of the parliamentarians at the moment, including Chris Hipkins, who's conceded that he smoked cannabis, a while ago, he said. I mean, merely calling himself a boy from the hut, doesn't that just sort of conjure up someone having a smoke? Doesn't it? I mean, I'm a little old man from Kelburn, and I've been smoking for 50 years. ever since I came through Afghanistan and Nepal in 1971, and I realized that the law in New Zealand wasn't necessarily a moral law. It's just an old-fashioned law which is imposed on us by America.
Okay, Meg, what box number?
Number 28.
It's an odd place for it to be.
Just moving
27's
around.
down the end.
So they could see all the numbers.
I know.
Otherwise we were just using
I
the
just
ones at
saw
the
that and
bottom.
I was like, oh.
Right. Okay. Here's an interesting question. Question T. How has New Zealand changed since you were a child? Has it changed for the better?
Right. No, it has not changed for the better at all. So we have crime that is rampant in many areas of our country. We're actually the lucky ones. So we have a bit of crime, but up north and down the South Island, rampant crime. We have government overreach into our lives where we shouldn't be noticing the government everywhere. We're having the overreach from government departments. We have division like we've never seen before. And I don't know about you, but I just think this is not the way our country should be. And as I've said, we have 1 in 5 people who work for the government, but our productivity is down and we have crises in so many areas. So something obviously is not working with that high level of public servants. So no, it is not improved. Thanks.
Okay, Taylor, what box number?
Number 3, please.
3. Okay. On a more positive note here. Question X. In what way or ways can New Zealand lead the world?
One of the ways that we can really lead the world is through research and development, because we are constantly hearing that we need to lower our carbon emissions, and the only answers that we are hearing is to regulate those industries out of existence completely. Well, that is the wrong way to do it, because if you regulate an industry out of existence, in 3 years' time, all the people you made unemployed are going to vote you out of power and they'll just reopen the industry again. But through research and development, we can lower our carbon emissions through new technologies and techniques, and then we can export that research and development overseas and really lead the world and become a powerhouse in lowering our emissions in the agricultural section. That is one way that we can lead the world, and one idea thought up by a Kiwi down here could really change the world and solve some of the biggest questions that we are having.
Okay, Don.
2, please.
This is question N. In your opinion, what do you think will be the main issue that will decide this election?
Well, probably economics, probably cost of living, and probably the hope that the incoming government will do better with the economy, which will, there's that hope that things won't be as bad as they were. I think that's it. Whether that's true or not, that's a completely different question, of course.
Okay, Michael, what box number?
27, please.
Okay, question 27. Box 27 question is question H, and one that's a little locally controversial. It's not about cannabis, Michael, but you might be able to work that in. Is government spending on cycling and cycleways a waste of money? Please explain your reasoning.
I'll defer on that.
Which candidate do you want to defer your card to? Question 2.
Me.
Sure. So, sorry, I wasn't listening because it wasn't for me, but it was a cycling one, right? Cycle lanes.
It's a cycling. Is government spending on cycling and cycleways a waste of money?
Yep.
Please explain your
Yeah,
reasoning.
sure. So right now we are in a cost of living crisis and we have extremely high levels of government debt. And central government is asking local government to spend almost 8 billion, or probably go above, for Let's Get Wellington moving. And cycle lanes, great things they are, but not now. No, now is not the right time, even if the design was right. The designs are not right by lots of areas. So no.
Interesting. I personally, I like the Adelaide Road one. It makes my commute to work very much quicker in my car. And there's no annoying people.
When you consider that it's costing $33 million a kilometre to put in those cycle lanes, then I think that you're going to find that that is far too much for the average ratepayer and renter to
Andy, you might be able to know a bit about the figures because you were on council. Adelaide Road, was that around about 33 million a kilometre?
I think that Michael is referring to one of the cycleways out in the hut.
That's right.
There's no way in the world. I
Waterfront.
mean, if you go down Adelaide Road, I suspect that way. I suspect you won't find as paved with gold it would need to be paying that kind of amount of money.
Well, if we're not careful, we're going to find that the
that one was
nannies.
a relatively cheap scheme, but nonetheless, there are people with different views on it.
If we're not careful, we're going to find that the nanny state is going to make cycling compulsory for everyone.
Well, they do have that at schools most days. Most days when I'm doing the deliveries, you watch them teaching kids how to ride bikes, and I think that's a very good thing, and we should be encouraging it. So, what box number, Meg?
Sure, number 8.
So I don't want to get invited into too many debates. I'm not supposed to be here debating things, Sam. Right. Okay. Oh, interesting constitutional one. It's question I. Do you believe that 16-year-olds should be able to vote?
Right, so we believe that young people, as mature as they can be, are not informed enough at that age and do lack the life experience to be able to put a vote in for the direction of our country and the way that we might be even how we might be spending on our foreign affairs and so forth. Young people are also heavily influenced by who they are living in the way of their guardian, so forth, and they're usually living at home at that age, usually, and also the fact of in school, when you've got an essay asking you to write to Jacinda to thank her so much for the way she has responded to the pandemic or so forth, which did happen in New Zealand, then maybe they could be influenced, so no.
They're not.
Are you trying to use button?
Button.
How many
Yep.
buttons does he use?
I think
button.
yeah.
They're not allowed to drink between 16 and 18. They're not allowed to, when we have our way and cannabis is legalized, we're going to say that it will be once you're over the age of 18. You should be able to decide whether or not you drink or whether or not you take cannabis. Education is going to be the answer because we don't want people to smoke cannabis. We want people to eat it or we want people to actually drink it. But at the end of the day, when you look at the last election, something like 250,000 of young people between the ages of 18 and 24 couldn't be bothered voting. They couldn't be bothered voting, and I don't think that you're going to find that those who are between the ages of 16 and 18 are going to be any readier to vote either. So I agree with Meg.
Okay, Taylor, what box number?
Could I have box number 16, please?
And I do say one thing: we should make hits in the ballot a compulsory thing at schools to watch.
Might be a very good contract for the Ministry of Education. If they've still got the money to do it. Right, okay, it's question Q. Over the past few years, New Zealand has suffered from many forms of division. How would your party reconnect people and heal the divide so that we are a united country once again?
All you have to do is look overseas to see some of the bitter divides that are occurring over there. And you need to actually ask yourself, what is the history around how did they get there and where are we? And then what can we do differently to ensure that we don't go down that path? And the first way to do that is by actually listening to the other people and listening to people and what their concerns are and what their worries are. and answering the questions that they have, because believe it or not, screaming at people and calling them names doesn't actually address their concerns or their worries. It just pushes them further away from you, and it creates the gulf in between you even larger. So the way that we will do it is by actually listening to people on both the left and the right and trying to find a solution that will bring them together, not drive them apart, and not result to name calling.
Thank you. Next up, Don. What box number?
I'll take number 1, please.
Hey. Right. That is question Z. What is New Zealand's biggest challenge, and what is the key policy your party is using to respond to it?
I don't think New Zealand has a biggest challenge. I think different sections of people in New Zealand have different challenges, and the biggest challenge in New Zealand for the business class, for the rich 1% who own most of the stuff, is to get richer. That's their biggest challenge. The biggest challenge for the majority of people who are down on the other side is in many cases just to get by, from day to day. So that's what I think.
Okay, and our last question from the boxes tonight, Michael. What box number?
12, please.
Okay. Lucky last is question Y. What is your policy on tackling New Zealand's obesity problem?
Drink more water. Drink more water. Only have 1 or 2 meals a day. You don't need to have breakfast, morning tea, lunch, afternoon tea, dinner in the evening, and then supper as well. Wait till you're about lunchtime and have something to eat, and then sort of have something later on. But drink more water. I've just come from the hospital. I've spent 4 days there because I got kidney stones. And what they told me, Michael, drink more water. And in the last 2 to 3 weeks, I've actually lost 5 kilos. So that is the answer as far as I'm concerned.
It sounds like they're giving you the same advice as Jesse Ventura. You can drink as much as you want as long as it's water.
Of course, I've also restricted taking some of those appetite enhancers. I won't guess what those are.
Yeah. Okay.
I
So
think we have a button there as well.
Oh,
If you look at obesity, not only in New Zealand but in other countries around the world, but very largely poorer people who suffer from this problem, and these are people who are rushing for doing a couple of jobs. They don't have time to cook properly. They live on fast food and stuff like this, and they comfort eat because they're stressed. So the way to tackle this huge and growing problem is to combat poverty.
very good answer there. And yes, I think the It's in the Ballot crew is suffering from that right at the moment, with us all managing full-time jobs and running these shows. Okay, we're going to take a quick break now, and we'll see you back in about 10 minutes' time for hard-hitting questions. Okay, we're welcome back. Now, just before we get off to hard-hitting questions, we need to address some information out there. We've had a person in the stream has mentioned about misinformation regarding, was it an answer to a question earlier in the show? As said earlier, but I'll repeat it again, we got our own team to sit there. The information was happy to to the needs. Whether you agree with an answer or not, that is the difference between a choice of misinformation or not. Some people, it is not our job to moderate misinformation. That's called censorship. If people want to sit there and give an opinion, that might sit there and do it. Some people, might sit there and say, I'm for gay marriage. Some people might say, I'm against gay marriage. But given the option of the choice there, it shouldn't be someone saying they're against being censored or someone saying they're pro being censored. That is not an approach that we would be doing. If there is something that is of misinformation. As I listen to the answers, if I've got concerns over that, I do push back. Tonight was not one of those shows of doubt. I've heard many different misinformation things that have potentially come up with there, and I have to be honest, most of the candidates who appear on the show are very, very well mannered. They explain sources, that sort of thing, so people can go out and look for the information. So I hope that can address some of those concerns there, and I don't think that our stream will be taken down simply for a differing opinion or anything that goes with it. Now, let's kick off for hard-hitting questions. Okay, and welcome back to It's in the Ballot. Now we've got audio coming through. Okay, that looks a lot better. Okay, we're back. We just had a bit of data issues with the stream transmitting out. So hard-hitting questions are the questions that we get all candidates to answer, and they're usually questions that are topical to a local community. In this case, it's Wellington Central. So for hard-hitting question number 1, the question is, how will you and your party ensure more affordable and better quality housing while respecting the best of Wellington's existing character? Let's kick off with Michael.
Well, it takes 30 years for a Pinus radiata forest to come to the end of its life and for it to be used for housing. If in fact you grow industrial hemp, you can get 5 harvests per year. And you can now turn industrial hemp into chipboard. You can turn it into load-bearing beams, which are as strong as steel. So we've now, since we set up our party, you can now get industrial hemp into this country, and it's now $1 billion crop. If you also legalize cannabis for recreational purposes as well, you'd double the quantity of hemp, because don't forget, you can use the stalks, you can use the leaves, and you can use all the detritus of recreational cannabis as well as industrial hemp. So if you legalize recreational hemp as well, you double the amount of industrial hemp that you could use for housing in Wellington. And you'd have far more materials than you can from wood.
Okay, next up, Don.
Yeah, 2 points on this. First off, housing is in this where it's come to is a national issue. It's not going to be solved in this city or that city. What is desperately needed at the moment is a massive building program of state houses by the government, paid for by taxing the rich. That's what's required across the country. What's also required is for rents to be no more than 10% of renters' incomes. Okay, so that's a couple of things that need to happen for affordable housing. The other thing is that in Wellington, there's a hell of a lot of houses that are empty. They call them ghost houses. Now, after a certain period of time, we believe these should be requisitioned by the government and then rented out at no more than 10% of renters' incomes. As it is, they're just being held back because some landlords can't get the exorbitant amount they want for them, so they just sit idle. So there's a couple of suggestions.
Thank you. Taylor.
This is one of the most contentious issues in Wellington, and it's really a circle that just goes around because we want to build homes. But we don't want to build homes on heritage homes. We don't want to build them on the green spaces, and we don't want to demolish existing homes and subdivide them into smaller units and then sell them off. But we want to build more homes. And then and this circle goes around and around. And then the moment of that, somebody turns around and they start to build homes, something happens, there's another appeal, there's another claim made, and then it gets held up. And then the costs of that development go up, 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 up. And then what was an affordable home is now a multi-million-dollar home, and now the developer has scrapped it because they can't actually make a profit on it. So what we want to do is first ensure that warehouses are being built, that the studies have been done to ensure that it is the right place for those homes, that there's going to be public transport in the area, and that the roads are good, and that when they are earmarked for that construction, they get built.
Thank you. And Meg?
Sure. So we do need more homes in the city because we have a lot of people living in our city, and we do need to help the easing of rent. So the interest deductibility needs to be reversed, so it's not non-deductible anymore, and so that will not put pressure on rent rises. Now we need to think about intensification levels in the suburbs, because the 3 stories and 3 units on each area is going to really impact the quality for families and elderly and people who need to have more space, whether it's for pets or whatever. So we need to change that. They need to have lighting that will affect people's health if lighting is blocked and affect their well-being. So we need to think of quality out in the suburbs. We need to have definitely more blocks in the city as well. Thanks.
Very interesting answers. Now, before we head to hard-hitting question number 2, the Martin Henley and Anna Kimball Welsh, very long-time people, of the Newtown Residents Association. They started the Newtown Festival. One of the good things about the Newtown Residents Association, and you're in the area that we actually are in because we're filming this in Newtown, they know building owners. They put up an alternative plan that could deliver 2,000 new dwellings into Newtown while retaining sunlight and was it size? It was approximately 3. I think they were 3-bedroom units, which if they were single units, you could actually get more. It was 3 times what the national policy statement required for Newtown, which was 750 new dwellings. Would that type of community initiative, where would you be proud to be supporting that? And I'd like all candidates to consider that response. I don't mind which order it goes in.
I would want to read that plan first before I make any commitment, but depending on how it is, yes, I would support it, but I would need to read it first.
I'd say exactly the same thing as Taylor, and I'd also like to know, where is the money coming from? Are we going to be borrowing to do it? Where's the cash going to come from?
There are some developers who have plans ready to go. That is what I've heard. Now, I wouldn't say across that whole corridor, but there are some landowners in the CBD of Newtown who have plans to go and would like to develop at some point.
Well, if they're going to intrude on the green space, then I don't agree with it.
There's no green space in Newtown, not in that area. But yes, I know what you're saying there.
Yeah. But I think that it would be necessary, as you say, Taylor, to actually have a look at the plans that people have got. You look at the problem that they've had over in Seatoun, where they were going to expand over there. And I think that you were involved with that, weren't you? Yeah, and Shelley Bay, yeah.
It's not near Seatoun. The same postcode, but...
Yeah. But it takes 5 to 10 years to actually get these things through. Under the management, as a lawyer, I know that the Management Resource Act, while protecting a lot of people, has in fact also led to a huge amount of problems in actually getting these things going.
Well, I think because we are in a housing crisis, and we do have actually still families in emergency housing, even in Kapiti Coast and so forth. So absolutely, you need to talk to every single developer who's interested in that, checking out their plans. And I think, did you say that even ways innovatively to have more light coming through?
Yeah.
So yes, so that is definitely the way to go. So if that is something that can be solved, yep, absolutely,
I
we'll be
f-
talking to them.
Yeah, Don.
No, I need to take a bit of a closer look at it, just from. But I would have to say the people I've met from the Newtown Residents Association always showed quite a bit of sense. So there may well be something in it.
Yeah, you're looking at one of the. I've been elected for my 7th term on the executive on Monday night, so I'm the youngest executive member, and we do have a running gag where we've got the oldest and the youngest, the only 2 admins to the Facebook page. Yeah, I know. I know. And Rona does a brilliant job as our president. I think, Andy, you've probably had a bit dealing with Rona over the years.
I have, and the Newtown Residents Association, a fabulous group of people.
Okay. So now we'll switch over to hard-hitting question number 2. Do you support the proposed Let's Get Wellington moving changes to the Golden Mile? Let's kick off with Meg.
Okay, sure. So with Let's Get Wellington moving, we're looking at just under 8 billion at the moment. So we are saying no to unnecessary spending right now with the current situation of the economy. There are also issues with the design. So there are many small businesses that are really concerned about the designs, how it's impacting them. We've already had businesses that have closed, just preempting what's going to happen. And many areas under, say, Karori and so forth, they're deeply concerned about losing parks, which will mean accessibility of elderly who need to drive instead of being able to use cycleways, and buses aren't coming quite to their doorstep. So there are some issues there. So there's the money issue, and then there's also the fact that so many communities are deeply opposed due to many different reasons.
Taylor.
Not particularly, because I think it is that there's a mix-up of priorities. Like the government, the local council is happy to earmark billions of dollars or even tens to hundreds of millions of dollars on cycle lanes. And then the areas where they're earmarking for those cycle lanes, they're going to be sitting on roads where underneath the roads, the pipes need to be replaced, they're busted, or they need to be expanded in order to prep us for intensification and more population. So they're spending millions of dollars on areas that in the next 2 to 3 years they're going to have to rip up anyway in order to replace it all. So first and foremost, I would actually like to see prioritization on things like pipes, and then we start to look at those areas, because, for example, Wellington Water asked for $12 million, I think, and they got 3. And we desperately need to have pipes, and so I think that the council needs to reprioritize its spending habits, especially if we are going to be growing as a city.
Can I comment on that? I agree 100% with what you say, Taylor. You know, it's going to cost billions, and it's going to take 5 to 10 years to actually get that the Golden Mile. It's not going to be the Golden Mile at all. It's going to be an absolutely useless area where people aren't going to be able to get into the shops. There are going to be hundreds of bankruptcies of the shops who won't be able. People aren't going to go into town. As it is already, I don't go into town very much. I come out to Newtown. I go over to Seatoun. I go out to Petone. I don't actually use the middle of Wellington if I'm going to do any shopping. It's too hard. It's $5 an hour to actually pay for a start, and now they're going to take 1,000 car parks out of Newtown, I understand.
That sounds a bit over the top.
That's what the newspapers were saying, and of course they do exaggerate. But people are being driven out of the central city and are coming out to the suburbs, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
Don.
Yeah. In terms of getting Wellington moving, what's needed is a few very definite changes in the question of public transport, specifically the buses. Now, the bus drivers have only just got a rise, but it brings them up to roundabout something like $30 an hour, and for the kind of responsibilities that they've got and the skills that they've got to bring to bear, that should be doubled. The bus drivers need to be paid more, and then the second thing that should happen is the split shift that's been imposed on them for years and years, and they're still labouring under, needs to be done away with. whereas they start early in the morning, they're going to sit around for several hours and then they carry on late into the night. That's most unreasonable to impose on anyone. That's why people don't want to drive the buses in Wellington. That's why they had to get people from overseas who've come from even worse conditions. So fix those things up, then public transport is going to be a lot better. And there is a very good case also to be made for free public transport.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our next question. This time the candidates get 2 minutes to answer it. What would be the first private member's bill you'd put into the biscuit tin when you go to Parliament? Taylor, would you like to start this one off?
This is a bit of a difficult one for me because there are several that I have in my head. But the first one that I would actually want is actually a legislative bill that actually requires a set proportion of each budget to actually go towards the disabled community, because for a lot of disabled community providers, they're really struggling with funding. Over the years, their funding's just been cut down very slowly. And a lot of disabled people rely heavily on those services. And I think that those services being defunded is wrong. It should not happen. And the bill that I would want to see go into the box would be to actually have a legislative percentage, or even with percentages of GDP, be required to be spent on our disabled community so that they can live a quality life.
I want to ask, do you know how much we spend GDP on supporting our disabled people? I mean, I know the answer will be not enough, but
yeah, it's not enough, and and especially with us going into difficult economic times, I know that some of the first people to lose out will be the disabled community, especially if ACT has their way with it. And I am 100% against that type of treatment, and a lot of them do need extra assistance.
So that be, say, like ring fencing 0.05% of GDP or something like that?
Something like that. Yes, something like that.
Okay, that's interesting. Don, what will be your first private member's bill?
Okay, my first private member's bill when I'm elected to Wellington Central as an MP will be to remove the penalties and the restrictions from the Employment Relations Act on the right to strike. Now, when the Employment Contracts Act came in, decimated the trade union movement. It took just about all their rights away, and there was all sorts of things wrong with that. And the Labor Party said, oh, we'll fix that up. You know, trust us. They came in and they produced a thing called the Employment Relations Act, which in terms of restrictions on the right to strike was just about exactly the same as the Employment Contracts Act. It's only possible for workers to strike in New Zealand in very limited circumstances, if in the case of safety or at certain times around your contract. You can't go and strike to support other workers. You can't strike over any social or political issues. You can't strike as we did at Ford's when I was there in support of a worker who was being sexually harassed. You can't do any of that. And the trade union movement has shrunk because it's got no teeth. That's why there are fewer people in unions. That's why unions are weak. And that's why the working class has been set back. So the first thing I'd do is bring a private member's bill to get rid of the restrictions and penalties on the right to strike. Because at the moment, in most circumstances, if you take an illegal strike, it can be fined or put in prison.
Very concerning. And I wonder if Michael ended up having to defend some of those over the years, because you sound like you'll be the person who'll be there helping them.
No guesses as to what sort of an act that I'd be getting through Parliament. 27 years ago, when we set up the Aotearoa Legalise Cannabis Party, you couldn't grow industrial hemp. Now you can. It's $1 billion crop in this country. 27 years ago, when we set up the party, you couldn't get medicinal cannabis. Now you can. 27 years ago, if you were found with cannabis in your possession, you could be prosecuted. Now, the police have to prove there's another criterion that they've got to prove, and that is that it's got to be in the public interest for them to prosecute you for possession of cannabis. So really, all we've got to do now is to actually get an act to allow people to grow their own cannabis, and most importantly, to expunge the convictions that people have or had, the hundreds of thousands of cannabis convictions that are still on the books in New Zealand. So we want to expunge those convictions, just like people who were convicted of homosexual offences over the years have had their convictions expunged as well. So that's what we would sort of make sure was there.
Okay, Meg, what will be your first private members bill in the biscuit tin?
So, first of all, it would be a parental rights bill, given that there are so many parents right now who are concerned with what their children are being taught in school and other rights that parents usually would have. So we have seen an erosion of parental rights over the years, in that children can be asking to be called a different name, pronoun, and parents are not to be told. So, parents, obviously would like to be having that knowledge about their own children. So there's definitely, there's a number of reasons. Also with the education, so the RSC education, relationship, sexuality education. So usually I've heard from Greens and Labor candidates this campaign time, not from Wellington Central, but other ones that have usually said justification, but it's because of our teen pregnancies, or it's because of sexual abuse, and it can often happen with someone that knows the child. But I would like to ask, how on earth does self-stimulation help that? Children are being taught self-stimulation in these classes, and how on earth does anal sex stop those two things, teen pregnancies and sexual abuse? So there is some interesting excuses or justification of this education, and obviously parents are deeply concerned. A 5-year-old child usually is happy to play in the sandpit in the mud with their toys. It's not a time that they should be learning about sexuality education, which is happening right now. So there's plenty of reasons that we need to have a parental rights bill. The other reason is that, so currently we have an Education Training Act that they need to consult with the parents every 2 years for sex education. 2 years is way too long. Thanks.
Thank you for that. And I just want to ask, does Vision have a standard private members bill? Because every Vision candidate that have appeared on the show, it's been something very similar for their first private members bill if they were in there. I thought we would have some creativity.
Oh, well, I guess because one of our key values is families, and this is quite a key issue right now. And I guess I'd say that not many others are talking about this. So National, Nicola Willis, so she's their social investment spokesperson, and she was asked by Sean Plunkett, what does she think about, girls having to get changed if there was a biological, male, and she said, oh, I don't have a problem because it hasn't happened to my children yet. But so other parents are kind of concerned because, there's things that can go wrong. We need to be preventative, not wait till things happen. So that's, I guess, why we need to pick this up, because if National aren't, and they're on the Conservative side, they should be thinking about families, and they're not. So yeah.
Oh, fair enough. No, I was just wondering on that, and I'm hoping tomorrow there might be a different bill on the Oharu show. So if sitting in the audience, the candidate might come up with something a bit different. I don't know. It could be all sorts of things.
We have a good one on law and order, crime. So hopefully
I'd like to hear that.
Yeah,
I think our audience would like to hear that. It would actually be quite good. Okay, so now let's. So we're at that time of the night where we'll get ready for closing statements on why Wellington Central voters should give their electoral vote to these candidates. And I'd like to say thank you for the candidates who are here, who have put the feet to the It's in the Ballot fire tonight, because this is not easy. And the good news about this is recorded and it will be up there for the next 22 days before voting finishes. Who would like to kick off as first person to give their closing statement? Okay, Michael.
Well, I'd really like to thank you and the team for the opportunity to speak to New Zealand the way that you've given us this opportunity, and thank you for your time. I realise that you're travelling all around New Zealand and it must be exhausting for you at some stage. Thank you. And of course, you've heard everything that you need to hear from me. We want cannabis legalized so that it's now recreational cannabis is regulated and it's available for those over the age of 18, and that medicinal cannabis should be available for all people who need it, whether they're minors or not, because of course medicinal cannabis is used for children as well, to get them, if they've actually got fitting
Epilepsy.
epilepsy, then using medicinal cannabis actually can not just cure them, but certainly alleviate a lot of the symptoms. So we want cannabis legalized, not just for recreational use, but we also want the convictions that people have had in the past to be expunged. Half of our goals have been achieved. We've still got a little bit way to go.
Okay.
So I'm looking for both the electorate vote, and I'm also looking for the party vote.
Okay, thank you. Don.
Yes, and thank you for looking after us tonight and for doing this work. It helps us all to get our views out. And what my views are is that they're summed up in the name of the organisation I'm here for, Workers Now. And we're called Workers Now because we recognise that lower paid people doing all sorts of absolutely essential tasks to keep things going, keep society moving, have been made to wait. And the longer I've lived, the worse I've seen this get. You used to be able to, when I started my working life, people could save up and they could get a house. You could rent somewhere that wasn't too flash, but you could get a cheap rent around town, and you could go and do a job, a reasonably low-paid job, a reasonably, so-called unskilled job, and you'd have enough to get by, save a little bit, and enjoy yourself. Now, all these things have gone backwards, and capitalism has basically tightened up on us, and you have to work harder to get less at the moment, and working people are not getting what they're entitled to. We should be getting enough money to enjoy life, to feel a bit secure, to educate children, and then have a bit of recreation when working day is over. So we're called Workers Now because we're for an immediate improvement in lower paid workers' conditions. So that's the core thing that we stand for, and we also stand for organising outside of Parliament. We're using the election as a platform. It's a means of getting things out. But what will take the turnaround is not just the votes. It's people massing and organising outside of Parliament. That's where our heart and soul is.
Thank you. Taylor.
Well, first and foremost, I am asking for the party vote because I am currently ranked 4th on the electorate vote campaign, which I'm very surprised about. It means I'm doing something right. But with that, I am asking for it, and you just need to look at the last 3 years to see just how sorely missed New Zealand First has been. When we were in government, we achieved or partially achieved 80% of what we said we would do in 2017. The only reason why we didn't fully achieve some of those things is because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, at the moment, you can look at the polls and you can see that it's National Act, and ACT has already been very clear that if they don't get everything that they want, they will go into confidence only with National. That's a way of them to say that we want power, but we don't want responsibility. We want change, but we don't want to implement it. And the only party that has actually got the guts to go in with National is New Zealand First. So please, party vote New Zealand First.
And I think it might be a great way of saying we want the glory when it in that saying, we want the glory when it's good, but when the shit hits the fan, we don't want to be part of it.
And we will be part of it no matter what and answer the questions.
Okay. Meg.
Well, thanks so much, Sam and team, for spending your Friday night doing this. We appreciate that. And so much to all of you coming out on your Friday nights. And it was really nice to chat with some of you. Well, I think so quite a lot of us can agree that our country is in need of something positive in many different areas. We have so much division and crises, and we really need positive change. And over the even decades, we have seen our country flip from blue to red and back again. And yet we still have some long-term issues, and we've probably picked up a lot more actually in the last 6 years too, I say, but we have some long-term issues. And we at Vision Freedoms New Zealand, we would like to say that we want to stand up for families and parents where they're not being heard, and for the voice that is not being heard, and whether it's in their freedoms and their rights, whether we talked about at Parliament, where every single party that was in Parliament agreed to not talk to protesters. That is really when democracy really crashed in our country, when so many people can be just wanting to work in their job and wanting to talk to their leaders who represent them, and being told that they cannot even be heard from any single party that's in Parliament who's representing them. So we would like to say that everyone should be heard, whatever the background minority, because there is, all different minorities, but we do need unity, but we absolutely need to be listening to each other. And so we would like to say that we would like to be a voice that can represent different areas and families, and also to get to the root cause of some of these issues. We just mentioned before crime, but some of these root issues are not being targeted, and we need to be preventative and look at what is going on with no rehabilitation of reoffending, people going in and out of our justice system. So this is what we can bring to the table with our law and order policy package, so that we can see real change and not spending $150,000 on every prisoner. When they're a year in prison, $150,000, we need to stop that reoffending. So yeah, that's another thing for you, Sam, to add to, so you don't get bored with the whole family's answers. So thanks so much for coming around. Thanks.
Not a problem. And thank you for the candidates there. Now, Andy, you've got something you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Well, thanks, Sam. It's my task to say a few thank yous to everybody for putting this show together. So first of all, thank you to all of our candidates here. First of all, for turning up. Sam's explained at the beginning that some of our candidates didn't participate in the show, and that's disappointing. So thank you all, first of all, for your courage in standing, for showing that you care for our community and for our country, and for turning up tonight to answer those questions. Secondly, I wanted to thank the people who have put the questions together. So those questions have come from watchers of the show, and so they're not generated by the show, but they're people who wanted their questions answered, and I think that's a great way of getting the answers from you as candidates to the questions that people wanted answered. Thank you to the audience who are here in the studio, and thank you also to the audience who are watching this on live stream and who will watch it later on as they pick it up later. So thank you very much for your participation in the democratic process. And finally, I just want to say thank you, Sam, to you, to the team who are here, and also the team who I know are doing all the technical work back at Base, and are going to have to sort of put the whole thing together and do any of the editing process. It's a huge amount of work that you're putting in over an extended period of time across a lot of the electorates, particularly around the North Island. You're making a huge commitment, and I really do hope, wish you well with that work, and hope that a lot of people watch the show and get at least a reasonable feeling for what not only the candidates are saying, but also some of the political parties are saying. That's part of a democratic process of being able to stand up there to answer questions, to put some points across so that people can vote in an informed way. So thank you very much to all of you.
And thank you, Andy. Thank you. And thank you for coming tonight to do the questions. It's an honour. As someone who has served, I think, most of my living life as on the Wellington City Council in one aspect or another. Just for those who probably do know,
Sam is very young.
Yeah, I'm similar age to your. Am I similar age to your children?
A bit older.
A bit older. Okay. So yeah, I was trying to think. Yes, one of Andy's nephews and I are good college friends, so it's a bit of a small world. And I think I'm going to have to sit there and say to him, I go, "Oh, how did you like me? How do you think Uncle Andy performed on my show?" So that will be very interesting. I'm not sure who should break the ice in there, me or you?
You're welcome to do that.
Okay. So we'll be off ready for tomorrow night's show. We're only doing one tomorrow night, Aotearoa Electorate at the Kandala Town Hall, which I think we've done a few shows over there over the years. Picked up the keys tonight, so we're about to have fun there, and we will see who turns up, who doesn't, and who has an empty seat left for them. So that's something we're looking at, and you can find out from New Zealand's, I think it's the highest paid electorate per capita in the country, of where their candidates are, that would be, and where they stand on different policies. Thank you to Nick, who's doing cameras, Alex, who's on the editor's desk this time around, the candidates, and Andy, who are here in studio and remotely, for both Ray and Jill for doing the remote editing, and for Caleb, who's helped us set up and will be helping us pack down the show today. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow night at 7 p.m.